All right, guys, what you're about to hear is my interview with Alisha and Catherine. I'm super excited to release this interview. I had just a great conversation with them. It was a really long conversation. For this interview, it's about an hour long. I thought about splitting it up into two parts, but there just wasn't really a good part to kind of cut that would be close to the middle. So this is going to be a longer episode, but I hope you'll stick around. There were some really great insights that I was able to learn. You'll hear Catherine talk about the difference in tolerance versus acceptance, and how acceptance doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but how we can slip into not just accepting, but tolerance. And that has helped me rethink in a lot of things of, okay, am I tolerating people, or am I actually accepting them for who they are, to just love on them? And I think Catherine and Alisha really have a great perspective because they work with children that are in the foster care system. They work with people when it comes to mental health. So you've got kids that have been rejected, and you've got people struggling with mental health issues. So I feel like they really provide a good insight into how Christians can love on the LGBT community from that place of acceptance and mental health, and how our words can be damaging. So I hope that you'll tune in and you'll listen, and you'll find some nuggets in there that will help you connect better and to love people more. So come on and this journey with us, and let's learn to love.
All right. Well, we'll jump in, and you guys, just take it in any direction that you want.
Okay.
I'm definitely more here to just listen and hear your story than I am to try to talk and input. Like, I'm not going to counter and rebuttal everything you say.
Oh yeah,
or even offer my own opinion on what you say.
Okay.
I'd rather just hear you talk.
Well, you've opened that door. Just kidding. So my name is Catherine Denham, and this is my wife, Alisha Denham. And I'll introduce me and let her introduce her. I'm notorious for introducing us both, but I'm a mental health therapist by trade, and a mommy and a wife by choice and honor. And I identify as a gay Mormon, but also Christian as well.
Okay, so I'm going to say the same. Literally, all of those things are the same. Mental health therapist, mommy by choice. What was the other thing?
Wife by choice.
Wife by choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I identify as a gay Christian. Yeah.
Also, Alisha is an artist by also trade. So she's a mental health therapist and an artist.
Yep, that's awesome. So you kind of mentioned it there a little bit, but tell me maybe where are you at on your faith journey? Like you say you're Mormon Christian, you say you're Christian. Is that something that's kind of just something that you still, like how you grew up, or something you're still actively involved in, you practicing? Just where are you at on your faith journey?
So being Mormon is a very unique identity, and it's just kind of part of my DNA. There is nothing that I still very much identify as a member of the church, member of the LDS church. I practice it in my very own way of being Mormon. I do not attend a physical church because I'm very close to possibly attending one back at my home state where I know that my friends are going, to feel a little bit more emotionally safe, but I haven't stepped foot in a church in like 8 years. And so I still very much claim that Mormon identity, believe very much in the gospel principles and the doctrine. My whole world, like my friends circle, my family circle, is very much tied up in the Mormon identity and the Mormon religion. And where I'm at is I am at peace with God, at peace with how I practice being a Mormon, how I represent myself being Mormon, which is just not the way that most Mormons do. I don't follow all of the, expected rituals and traditions because I just kind of practice it in a way that makes me feel safe and makes me feel at one and congruent with God. So very much still super strong faith, super strong testimony, I would even say I'm closer to God now, especially after being married to Alisha, who was raised in a different religion, but still very like structured and strong and, lots of boundaries with it, or like not boundaries, but like lots of expectations. And her understanding of her relationship with God has really helped me form my very own personal relationship with God. So I feel like right now I am kind of doing my faith in a way that makes me feel at peace and complete. I do wish I had a church family to belong to, though.
Sure. Yeah. And, I'm just going to kind of pick up from there. So we have looked and searched, and it's hard for us to find a church family that accepts us as a married couple, and and we have children, so also having them with us at church is obviously important. And so there's just not anywhere that we have found that we have felt comfortable to go, and that really stinks. But it's God is woven into our marriage, into our relationships individually. It is absolutely foundation that we have built our relationship on. I grew up in the Assembly of God Church, so I come from a long line of Assembly of God ministers. And then whenever I was probably about 16 or so, I switched over and started going to a non-denominational church. And I even spent a year preparing to be a pastor. And, it was during that time frame that I kind of got my footing and started to realize like who I was, and who I am is not someone that as a whole the church is going to accept. And so I kind of started then to back away. And it's probably been maybe 15 to 18 years since I've actually physically been in a church.
Yeah.
So as far as where I am individually with my walk with God, it has definitely become one that is just a personal relationship, and kind of being on this path where I find peace and comfort in my relationship with Him, because being part of a church family has not been an option for me individually in a very long time, and then obviously for us as a family. So.
Yeah, that's really sad, and I hate, like, I can imagine. I can't imagine, because I am a white male, so it's like I really have all of the benefits in America, but I can imagine that has to be how back in the 60s, maybe how the African American community felt like they weren't welcome in predominantly white churches, and they just kind of had to form their own thing. It's like I've made the joke for years that Sunday's the most segregated day of the week, because churches are still just so segregated by color. So, most of the time, I think people, and it may be from, I'm not ever been to a Mormon service, so I don't know maybe what's done from the stage or pulpit there. I've been to lots of Assemblies of God, and I know maybe it's not as prevalent maybe as some other denominations, like maybe a Baptist church, but it seems like, most pastors or Christians can just be heard shouting that, homosexuality is a sin, with no thought to just the specific person that may be like, just how that may impact them and how they may be hurting, and they just don't even consider their story. So I would love to hear a little bit of you guys' story as it relates to maybe what you faced specifically or felt on the inside, but how you were treated differently by Christians and by just the church in general.
So it's hard because whenever we talk about homosexuality from the pulpit, we are not talking about homosexuality as a relationship and being in relationship with each other. You know, what we're talking about is a sexual sin, you know? And so it's hard for me because whenever we are talking about, you know, gay is wrong, gay is a sin, I mean, it just feels like so often Christians are viewing it as that one thing, right? So it's like we're talking about a sexual sin. We're not talking about someone who is gay or someone who is in a marriage or in a relationship with someone else. And I really wish that people would see us as just humans, like, you know, and not as a sexual sin. And so that is the hardest part of going to be part of the church family and being gay, because that's all you are, is you're identified as sexual sin. So you're kind of sitting there like, there's so much more to this than just, you know, why you are preaching it from the pulpit as it's wrong, you know. And I think that is something that I have found, whether I've been in a non-denominational church, whether I've been in an Assembly of God or a Baptist church or a Catholic church. It's like these are the ideas that people have as to why it's wrong. They don't see you as a human, they see you as a sexual, you know, sin. So we've heard about that. The Mormon church is very similar, you know.
So, well, the Mormon church has a little bit of some language differentiation. You will hear Mormon leaders, LDS leaders, say that being gay is not a sin. That if you as a person identify as gay, lesbian, whatever, that is not a sin. It is acting upon those thoughts and feelings that is a sin, which makes it a little bit more trivial. Because we then now have a segment of the LDS population who are saying, I'm gay and I'm an active member of the church and I've married my, you know, straight partner or spouse in the temple, which is like the highest kind of, you know, achievement here is marrying and being married and sealed in the temple, you know, so that you have that relationship for eternity. So we do have a segment of the Mormon population that is openly gay, but either celibate or in a straight marriage and still claims their gayness and very much active members of the church. Which I don't know about other religions if they have that little nuance in there, but that even makes it more in line with what Alisha is saying, is that, again, all you've really done is seriously drill down that gay is nothing more than sex between two same-sex people. Like more than any other church, the LDS church has done that. So, it makes it very tricky because you then think you're kind of being accepted, but you just have to leave this one thing at the door. And my journey, my LGBT journey is very different than Alisha's. I don't know if this is because I was raised in a very small town. I was raised in a town that was primarily LDS. And so therefore you just already knew what was expected and the path you were going to take. Or if God just put Alisha in my life at the time that he did. I don't know, but I did not grow up thinking or identifying as gay. I can say that there were times in the straight relationships that I was in that it just felt, well, now that I'm in a relationship with Alisha, I can tell you that those relationships didn't feel complete. But I didn't know that at the time because I didn't have, it's not like people are having these really in-depth, intimate conversations about their marriages with other straight people. So I just thought, this is how all other straight couples are. So it wasn't until I was way older, like 32, 33, 34, when Alisha and I, when I developed feelings for Alisha and then realized, oh my gosh, I'm gay. And this explains so much in my previous straight life. And that whole coming so she had her coming out phase at a different time than I did. And I will tell you, for about 2 years, it was excruciating. It was it was painful and heartbroken, and it was
it was because of this
yes,
that we're talking about.
This is the only thing that caused my spirit to be crushed, was this reckoning of how could I be gay, and also, I knew what the truth was. It's been ingrained in me. And so then I'm coming out, I'm in this amazing relationship. It feels completely like this is what God intended for us to be as partners with each other. And everything I knew in the whole world to be true, all of a sudden just did not make sense. And so I think that it was the only reason I am where I am in my faith journey now is because everything that I had been taught and everything that had been ingrained in me had to break apart. And then I had to reform it into my very own. So that whole, like, what was happening on the inside is people were, kind of treating you on the outside. I was not involved in any kind of organized church during that time at all. I still had my friends and my family, and it was like a mixed bag of tricks. Some of my family was like, okay, you do you, we love you, whatever. And some of my family and friends just couldn't get with it. Like it was the whole like, okay, fine that you're gay, but you can't like be gay with her. And it just was this whole, like, all of a sudden I was a totally different person to some people. I was disgusting. How could I? Who was I? So, and that was not within an organized religion, but again, these friends and family are part of this religion that I have this identity with. So it was very painful, and also there were lots of people who I was surprised would say, yay, great, we're so glad you're happy. So it was kind of a roller coaster of 2 years.
And you feel like that was it? Did you have it on your side, Alisha, where it was pretty, like, it just, you were kind of accepted maybe by your family, your friends, or was it like you had to just disconnect for a while?
I was loved. And so that was what was the most important thing. And so my parents were definitely one of those, like old school Christian Southern couples that were like, we love you and you're our child and we want you to be happy. And just so you know, God's word also says X, Y, and Z, so it's like, okay, it really wasn't until actually I met Catherine and we started getting close and started dating that my parents were a little bit more like, okay, so this person is really good for you and you're happier than you've ever been. And so we're going to accept her into the family and we're going to love her. Up until her, there was not really any relationship that I had that was anything more than we love you and one day you're going to meet the right man, Whenever she and I were dating, it was quite different. And so now today, I think where my parents stand, and I keep referencing them because they are definitely my biggest support, in my life. So where they stand is kind of, we love you, we love her, and we don't agree that you're gay. Like, we don't agree with this is the right thing for your life, but we love and accept her as part of our family. So it's a little incongruent, but they accept her and they absolutely love our children, which is the most important thing. There's been a lot of people that
we didn't get there just all peachy keen though. It's been a
long road.
Everything we're saying, there's been like,
I can tell you that growing up in the church, there were a lot of adults in my life that I was super close to, a lot of mentors that I had, and with the exception of maybe 2 of them, every one of them have walked away from me and being part of my life. Even to the point, like, for some of them, like blocking me on social media and things like that. It's like totally unnecessary and incredibly hurtful and painful. So there was definitely not a road of acceptance for me. It also wasn't an option. It was not, a choice for me. And so you can't choose who you fall in love with. And I had made peace with God and his love for me and my relationship with him. And that's been something that has never wavered in my life. And so it was kind of one of those things of, I know who God is and I know who I am to him, and he's going to bring the right person in my life. So it didn't really matter along the way.
Yeah. So it sounds like both of you guys really were able to maintain your faith throughout the whole journey. Maybe some deconstructing and reconstructing and reimagining, but for the most part, you're able to hold on to your faith. Do you feel like that in that process then, or even now, that there were ever really any doubts about God, or doubting who you were, maybe even doubting that you were loved by him in the midst of that? Or was it that stayed solid the whole way? And maybe what I'm saying more is in reference to how maybe other people in your church or Christians as a whole or family that call themselves Christians treated you in that moment that maybe caused you to doubt, okay, does God love me? Like anything like that?
So I have one of my just like spiritual gifts is just like faith, just given since I was an infant. Like nothing has ever shaken it. So I never doubted that God existed. God knew me. God lived. God loved me. I never doubted any of those things. What I started to question for those 2 years was, how could I be this way and be in relationship? How could I be both things? How could I be gay and also still a child of God and loved by him? I knew he loved me. I knew he existed. I knew that he was real and all of those things. So I never doubted, did he exist? But my doubts came in having to really hold all that I had been taught my whole life, that gay was a choice, gay is a sin, how you are in being gay is wrong. And so that's what I doubted. Like, how can I be this way? It was me that I was doubting. Like, what, why are you this way? Why are you wrong? What's wrong with you? So it was never him. It was just me that was the thing I had to really, that I started questioning was me.
Yeah, that's very different for me. So
it was.
Faith is not my strong suit. I am absolutely a doubting Thomas and question God at every turn. For me, I think that it was also a little bit different because my journey started so much younger. And so whenever we are youth or young adults in the church, it is such an important part to have those like adults in our lives that are influential, over us. And I mean, it is like those spiritual leaders over us. They, for a lot of kids, can make or break things, And so I doubted everything. I questioned God. I never doubted, does he exist? But I definitely doubted, does he love me? What's wrong with me? What's broken inside of me? Why am I not normal, right? And so there was a lot of self-hate. There was a lot of turmoil, for a very long time. And a lot of, having to sort it out just between me and God and on my knees. And,
kind of blaming him too, though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, if if you are everything and you're all knowing and you can do everything, then why did you screw up with me? You know, what happened? And so my road has been a lot harder. And I mean, even just in the LGBT, you know, population, this is hard for kids and young adults. I mean, we're talking about the rates of like suicide and, you know, self-injury and self-hate is triple with kids in the church, you know, that are on this path because of just the internal shame that is built in, you know. And so that was my road, and it was incredibly hard, and it has taken me a lot of prayer and, you know, a long time with God to get to where I am today with it. So
Do you still like there's still like those lingering doubts kind of in the back of your mind, like does he love you, or do you feel like that's all been kind of reconciled?
Yeah, absolutely. But it definitely was not through the help of people in the church, you know.
Yeah.
And so I had a really strong foundation of praise and worship. I was part of a really amazing praise and worship team at one point in my life, and music is a passion of mine. So honestly, where I kind of made peace with God was in that, you know, worship with him and things. So it definitely has unfortunately not been from the help of other believers, you know, but I'm not in the place that I used to be, than I once was.
And my experience is different. So in the LDS culture, everything is very standardized, and the messages are all the same, from whether you're in America or whether you're in Africa. Like everything is very consistent and standardized. And so for me, that's kind of easy because I can filter out what messages I want to keep and what messages I want to kind of discard. So, and a good majority of my social media people are members of the LDS church. And so it's real easy for me to just like unfollow people who post things that don't align up with what I now know to be true. And over the course of the last 8 years, I really have, whether it's real or not, it's my social media. I have created this social media safety zone where everyone on it that I follow supports me as a gay person and my wife. Even if they don't agree, they support the LGBT community, and also, or they are no longer active in the LDS church and therefore support me because it's not an issue. So my world now only consists of interactions with people who can see me, who can validate me, who can love me, and also this part of me who don't separate this part of me. And I'm not saying just Alisha, but what this represents. Right. So, and most of my support comes from people who are active in the LDS church still, and they're doing a very beautiful and graceful job of loving me and accepting this part of me and embracing it and allowing me to be in the religion the way that I need to be in it. So I'm having a much different experience, but only because I'm not physically going to a church, and I'm not engaging in any kind of like just free having magazines sent to my house or listening to like a general conference where I can't filter out what the messages are. I'm very protective and guarded about what comes in, because, you know, it's hard to unindoctrinate yourself. And so I make sure that I'm not bombarded by any of that negativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. It's, you know, I've been in the process of having to unlearn so much of the God I inherited that I don't find represented by Jesus. Mm-hmm. The things I was taught that don't look like Jesus, but Jesus says that he is the exact picture of his Father. So then if it doesn't look like Jesus, then something else is going on in the story. And so I've had to go on my own journey to begin to unlearn some of that. And Alisha, this may be more of a question for you because it happened, your whole process was a lot younger. But do you think that life would have looked different if at that critical juncture you had a leader in your life that was just full of Jesus's always inclusive and always good love? Like, what difference would that have made? Obviously, you would have still been where you're at.
I can tell you 100% it would have made a huge difference. I went down a path with my mental health, just again, self-hate, depression, questioning, like, am I even worthy of God's love and being here, that we could have skipped, And so, I mean, there was definitely a really, really dark period, years of my life that had I had that support and that the truth behind, what God's love really is, looks like, feels like, it would have changed everything in my young adult life,
And then, so like we referenced before we really started, I really read what you wrote a year ago, Catherine, and really loved your perspective and a lot of wisdom. And if you're okay with it, I may just link it in the show notes so that people can see it in full context. And so, but I would love to hear your answer to this question. And I just sprang this on you. I sent all the other questions before the call, but I sprang this one on you last minute. And I want to quote just kind of that part of what you posted in your post is, do remember that accepting that they are gay is not the same as agreeing with them being gay. And I know that's a huge step. I think if people can just accept people and love them, to not, have to agree with them. I know I've had people in my life say things like, well, how do I, love the person and hate the sin? And my ideal on that is you've already lost, because you want to make sure they understand that you're not in agreement. You've already missed the mark of love. Mm-hmm. But I've come across a lot of people that will say, no, I am always accepting, but my acceptance is somewhat conditional on you coming out of what I deem to be sin. What would you say to, because I think that's already a beautiful point of accepting doesn't mean agreeing, but what about that little nuance there of accepting if you're willing to change? At some point, you're going to have to change.
So I would challenge whoever would say that to me as, well, that's not acceptance, it's tolerating.
Yeah.
It's tolerance. And so people don't want to be tolerated. They want to be accepted and embraced. So I would, want to bring to their attention that that's not actually what Jesus asked us to do. He didn't say tolerate the least of these. Mm-hmm. So, and then number 2, I would say, are you doing that for all of the sinners in your life? Are you only tolerating them on the condition that they will come out of all of their sins? And if you're not able to do that, well, then if you're not holding that standard to all sinners in your life, which, clearly this is an impossible thing to do. So it just kind of is like my best motivational interviewing skills. Then however you're treating your other sinners in your life, feel free to treat me the same, And then the third thing that I would say is that we might have to just come to an understanding that we disagree about gay being a sin. I equate being gay to my color and to my gender, and only because I am in agreement with my gender. So recognize that I believe that you might not be in agreement with your gender, so therefore this doesn't apply. But I equate being gay to my color, and to being female. Those were not choices I got to make. They just are. And so if you can separate it from being a choice, this is where the crux is, I think, for most Christians, those who can get it and those who can't. Those Christians who can just accept that this is not my choice are able to see past this sin. If they can accept that this is just a part of who I am and God's going to figure it all out later, they're a lot more willing to embrace me, embrace Alisha. It's just not a thing, because it's like, oh, okay, so you're gay, brown, and girl. Great, come on in. So I think I would kind of challenge that thinking in that's not accepting it when you want to leave the gay at the door. I couldn't leave my gay at the door any more than I can leave my brown at the door. So, and it does kind of take you back to the 60s where, we allowed you to come in, but you can't bring your color in, right? And we've learned from that's impossible. Like, you cannot separate those things, and you can't demonize things that these people can't choose. So, and that becomes the biggest battle with, I think, the gay world, all the gay world, and the divide in the Christian realm is those who can see it as a choice, or those who can't. Wait, what am I saying? Those who see it as a choice, and those who just kind of accept that it's not, and maybe they don't understand it, and they're just going to let God figure it out in the end. That's kind of where the divide is. So I think that's what I would say, is that just because you are allowing them to be in your home, just because you acknowledge the language of, this is my wife, just because you celebrate with us our child's birthday, does not at all mean you have told God that gay is right. And we've had this conversation with several close family members that we've had to really get, if we're going to have great relationships, we have to be authentic. And sometimes that means saying the hard things. And these people we love and respect, and they love and respect us. And we still had to say to them, you don't need to tell me that you don't believe gay is right. God knows your heart. You've told it to God. Don't say that anymore to me. It is hurtful and unnecessary. So it's, it's one of those things where they have to figure out how to be with us and not just categorize us as one big gay sexual sin.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of wisdom and really great.
It's really not, well, it might be hard for some people, but it really isn't that hard when you have faith in God. If you trust all of this to God and you just let him figure it out, it really doesn't even become your business.
And whenever you allow people to have their own personal relationship and walk with God.
Yes.
It's like, especially I'm coming to you, I'm telling you, like, I'm a Christian. I'm here with you. Let my relationship with God be mine.
Mm-hmm. Like, you do you. Yeah. This is my new favorite mantra. You do you, and I'm going to do me. And then we're just going to kind of do this thing together, however that makes both of us feel safe. And I don't mean it's none of your business in like a rude way, but like in a way of your love for you, loving me is your business. That's what God told you to do, was to love me and to, make sure that you were taking care of your fellow people. But you waiting for me to work my way out of this sin,
that's God's business.
Right, that's God's business. And if you're not doing that for all the other sinners in your life, and you're not, because that's not what you can do, then you don't need to do that for us either. And it really is that thing of you're only categorizing gay by the sexual behavior. You're just making it perverted. And being gay is, this is a real relationship. We fight, we cuddle, we problem solve, we goal plan, we laugh, we cry. It's all the things that you enjoy about being with your partner and your love of your life. It's so all of those really rich
Human experience.
Right? There is nothing really different other than she's a girl, I'm a girl. That's like, I mean, there are differences in the relationships, but really and truly, we're just married and it's fine and it's not a big deal. We're not going to suck you in. This is the other thing that I think some people get really scared about is, maybe there being an influence of us turning someone else gay. And I'm just going to say that that's not how this works. This is by far not a choice. And it's just, you are gay or you're not gay. Like that just kind of is. And sometimes you don't know until later in life. So if you're worried, like, sometimes people think that if you're too close to sin, it can like influence you or something. That's not how this works. We can't turn you gay or influence you to be gay. You just are, or you're not. So I think that might also maybe play a small part of why people are hesitant to embrace the gays. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And let's say that you're wrong to be married. Okay. At best, you're going to be married, 60 years?
Right.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe medical science takes us out further, 60 years, and then you're going to be married to him for eternity. Which one's the bigger deal?
Right. Exactly.
60 years or eternity. So even if, so I love that part. I said that because you said, like, let's just accept people and love people and let God figure it out in the end.
Yes.
If you get, I don't think you're going to have an issue if you get to heaven and he's like, that wasn't my best for you, but I love you. Come on in. You're going to be like, oh,
yeah,
but I still enjoyed life and did the best I could and loved you and loved others.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and I think we're going to be married to him for eternity. Like, who I'm married to now on this earth is important to me now, but in the grand scheme of eternity, it's nothing.
Right. So true. And it is nothing, but our time on earth really is so short that we shouldn't allow something like this to sever those relationships. And, I don't know about the rest of the Christian world, but I do know, I called it the Gay Mormon crisis because it's true. It is at a crisis level. It is a horrible pandemic within the Mormon religion that so many youth and young adults are losing their lives because in the Mormon world, we're not just here for now. We are married for eternity to our person in the temple when that happens, and all the family is sealed as well. And it's just like a big thing. And so when a child of a family that was sealed comes out as gay, it's as if they died because they will not spend eternity with you. And there is this grieving that happens, and lots of times the families just can't deal with it. And so there's either this complete separation and severance, or the youth, feels like there's literally no reason to live because I'm not going to have them now and I'm not going to have them later. And so, as you're saying, does this matter compared to eternity? No, but this time does matter when it comes to us connecting and being in relationship with other human beings. And it really just takes one person to be able to accept you, to keep you here on this earth. Like, you just need one person who loves you and sees you and validates you to help you not kill yourself. I'm not saying that's the total antidote, but it definitely helps. So, we really are in a,
and it's not just in the Mormon world.
Yeah, maybe that's true too.
Even in the way that I was raised, there's a separation. I will spend eternity in hell away from God and His love for being gay. And so we see this crisis in the Mormon Church, again in the Assembly of God, non-denominational. It is a crisis with kids and young adults being gay.
Okay, awesome. So I think some of the questions I want to ask, because I think maybe more tailored to people that have left their faith, like what does religion and Christianity mean, or love mean? I think you guys have probably indirectly already answered a lot of that. But what would you say is something in general that Christians seem to misunderstand about the LGBTQ plus people? Is it that it's not a choice? Or what would you say is the number one thing that they most misunderstand or misrepresent about who you are?
I think there's a couple that kind of come to mind.
Yeah. I think that for me, the number one is that it's a choice. It is not a choice. You don't get to choose who you fall in love with. Now, I think that at any point, this is true for same-sex or heterosexual couples, you can choose whether or not you want to stay in that relationship and move forward, but you don't get to choose who you love. And I think that that is a huge misconception in the church as a whole.
I would agree that I feel like that's first and foremost number one. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I think is kind of misunderstood is, that all being gay is sex. And so I think we hit on that, but one of the first kind of comments that people make when they are anti-gay or really opposed is how disgusting that is. That's disgusting. And immediately when I hear that, I know that your brain only can see this as a sexual image. Like you're unable to separate that it's an identity, a part of my identity, versus like a verb or an action. Like it's not that. It's all of this. And so the only thing that is disgusting to people is the image of the whatever sexual thing is happening, kissing, holding hands, even it becomes disgusting. And so I think that's the other like misunderstanding or misrepresentation or whatever was is that it must just be nothing but physical contact, right. And it's just like every other straight couple, like whatever that is. And I think that becomes like the big kind of thing that makes their skin crawl, is the images that they pull up in their own mind about what they think being gay or transgender or whatever is, right. Narrowing it down to just the physical component.
Yeah. So if you could say anything to the Christian community, the church community that maybe you don't feel as welcome in, at least in our local area, because I know we're both in Pensacola, that it's from either from you or just like, I know that, like I don't speak for all Christians, so I can't ask you to speak for the whole LGBTQ community, but just from your friends and people that are in your community that maybe have shared some similar struggles or similar ideals, like what would you just say to the Christian community that you haven't already said? Like if somebody's giving you a voice and a platform to just speak directly to the Christian community, what would you say?
So I made this as a joke one time, a few weeks ago on someone's Facebook page, but I have thought about it seriously since then because it makes sense to me. And if I had only one thing to say to the Christian world, it would be make a gay section in your congregation. Just put like a little rainbow. And here's what I'm saying. That way allies and gay people can sit there. It doesn't mean that the other people are anti-gay. It just maybe means like they're not super comfortable like touching shoulders and like being in my space. They don't know a lot about it. It scares them. They think it's disgusting. It could be a whole range of who doesn't sit there. But I honestly would like there just to be a couple pews where it is a gay state. I know it sounds so funny, but it really does like make me feel like, oh, even if me and Alisha were the only ones there, do you know what that says about that church? That there is a recognition that you all need your own safe space, that we recognize that you are a member of our congregation, you are a part of our family, and that on some level, we've tailored what we say to make sure you feel inclusive. So it sounds funny and no one's going to do it, but I wish there was like a gay LGBT section where the allies could sit and the gay people. That's what I would say.
Yeah, there actually is a church that has something similar. It's not as necessarily like it's sectioned off on their Sunday church, but they have a special group, and it's called Sacred Space, and it's a safe place for people in the LGBTQ community to come in, to grow in discipleship, to feel loved and welcomed in the church. And the church says, like, we don't believe that this was God's ideal, but we're not trying to throw out terms of like, you're in sin, because that carries kind of its own connotation of what that word. And their thing is like, we believe you're missing the mark of God's ideal, the same way that, and I've heard the senior pastor say, like, the same way that I've missed God's ideal every single day. So we want to create a sacred space for you to come in and feel safe. So I do know it's out there.
What church is that? Oh, well, I don't know.
It's in Minnesota. I think it's in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Oh, man. Well, shout out to them. That's awesome.
Yeah, I would love to see more of that happen. And it is a huge and thriving community. And so that tells me one thing, that even though they're saying that we don't believe this is God's ideal, but people are still showing up and it's growing, tells me that there must be a lot of love there.
Let us in. We need in. Yeah. We need to come in. We need it just as much as everyone else. And I like that they're not straying from their message, but they're also equating the sin. Your sin is no greater than my sin, versus here I stand in judgment of your way big sin. So that I can sit in a congregation where, okay, so they're calling gay a sin. Guess what? I have other sins. Being gay isn't one of them. But if they want to say that, that's fine. I've got all kinds of other sins. And as long as you play them equal, I feel like I could sit in that space and it not feel like I'm being attacked. Right. I don't know if that's true, but it feels like that might be a possibility. What would you say? Sorry. What would I say to Christians if you only had one opportunity?
I think what I would probably say would be that, first and foremost, God's love is inclusive, period, without question. His love is inclusive. And I think that I would raise the question, what is more important to him, my love or your judgment of my love? You know? And so I think that if people could look at it in that perspective, things would be a lot easier for LGBT youth, LGBT families, you know, coming into the church and wanting to be a part of your church family.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. So, if a person who calls themselves a believer and they're not familiar with the LGBTQ community, are there certain questions they could begin to ask to better understand? Like, so maybe somebody that's going on a journey that's like, I don't understand the community. I'm still wrestling with whether I fall on whether it's wrong or not, but I just want to love and I want to understand more. Are there questions or things that they could ask that you could give them, you know, maybe get them a few steps further down the road than they are now?
Yes. So the first thing I would say to anyone who had an inquiring mind would be, let's get some really safe vocabulary, some very basic vocabulary. It's a world and a community that you're not familiar with, and language is so powerful. So if we're going to have just like a basic vocabulary, let's remove lifestyle out of the vocabulary. So this is not a gay lifestyle, it's just a gay life. So I would highly recommend you not call it, like a lifestyle choice or choice. The other thing that I would say is and I think if you put that link into the thing that I wrote, there's some examples and stuff in there about how don't say this, but do say this. But be genuinely curious about what vocabulary works for them. So, the language is different for everybody. It really is. How do I want to be identified? How do you not want to be identified? So if you want to have a relationship with this person, one of the first things we say to someone when we meet them is, what's your name? What can I call you? And we should be meeting them. So how do you identify? Guess what? I'm brand new to the LGBT community. I'm completely ignorant. I don't know what all the right words are. Can you please help me understand what are some words that work for you and what are some that are offensive? Mm-hmm. If you're just with a really open heart, I feel like anyone in the LGBT community would be really excited to hear someone say what works for you and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. The other thing is being just authentic. Like, I'm really struggling with this. And I know that you're struggling with this. You're struggling with my struggle. So how am I doing here in this walk with you? Am I being supportive? Have I done something that's been hurtful? Am I not using the right words? Just being open to that feedback, because this is not easy. It's not easy for the gay person. It is not easy for the straight person. I'm just assuming they're straight, but it's just, if you're not willing to have safe conversations that will be painful but move towards growth, then don't engage in that. Like, if you're not willing to put your pride down and open your heart to hear what they have to say about their painful struggle, then you're not in a place in your life where you can walk alongside them in this journey.
Right. And just being open to maybe perhaps the way that you have been taught and raised or whatever is not as close to Jesus as, as really you should be, or what he would be, asking, or what would Jesus be saying? How would he be communicating with you as a person versus, you as a gay person? So I think just that willingness to, like you said, be genuine and authentic. And I am a firm believer that you can pretty much ask anyone or say anything to anybody as long as your heart is in the right place. So if you are coming with an open heart and an open mind and genuinely curious, I feel like any question is a valuable one. But
it is better to ask than to just not, just to leave that as a closed area, because it really could have been a really awesome missed opportunity. And there are times where people will refer to Alisha as my partner, and depending on my relationship with them, I might correct them and I might not. Believe it or not, I think the LGBT community as a whole is very forgiving. We live in a not LGBT privileged world, so we have to be forgiving whether we choose to or not. And so I think that it's the fact that you're acknowledging that this is going to be a hardship and let's do it together speaks volumes. Like, don't just treat me like I'm like everyone else, because I'm really, my uniqueness here, this struggle is us figuring out how to walk this way together. Mm-hmm. It can't just be equated to everything else.
Yeah, that's great. Are there questions that maybe that I didn't ask that would be great questions to ask for something like this, or just things that maybe you want to mention that I didn't directly ask?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, I feel like you gave us a lot of space, and we are so, honored and so appreciative of that.
Yeah. So I'm just grateful that you guys had the conversation. I feel like even just both of your guys' jobs allow you to have a lot of wisdom and insight to the areas of mental health and how our words as people, especially align ourselves with the teachings of Jesus. Like our words are so powerful, and we should be using them to love, not to judge.
Yeah.
And so I'm just very grateful that you guys are willing to.
I will add this, Brian, and that is in thinking about being a part of the church community and wanting to reach out to the LGBT to invite them in. I will say this, at least from my personal perspective, we are terrified to come in. Mm-hmm. So it would, the privilege and the safety belongs to you. And so that's your home. That's where you feel comfortable. That's where you know all the people. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that just because you're the pastor, but I'm saying like any member of your congregation that isn't gay already has this complete and total acceptance of this belongs to me. And my personal experience would be, God, I don't know, am I allowed to go in there? What's that reception going to be like? It's already really like vulnerable for me to acknowledge for me to bring my wife into a place that statistically speaking, about 98% chance that I'm going to get some kind of pushback.
Yeah.
So in helping churches be more accepting to, or inviting, I'm not even saying accepting, inviting and welcoming to the gay folks, just remembering that you reaching, like you introducing yourself to them, or you seeking them out when they're new, I think would speak volumes. It at least says, I see you and the girl. I see you two girls together, and I'm not afraid, and I'm going to come find you and seek you out and hold you. And I mean, not like physically, but, like bring you
create
in.
A safe space.
Yeah. So I would say, that that might be just something to keep in mind if you see that. You're offering such an amazing
man. I'm telling you,
thing.
So hopeful.
You're really saving lives. I'm just gonna let you know. Thank you for doing that.
I think you realize. Yeah, you really are.
People need this.
Yeah, I think I want to see people in the LGBT community realize that no, somebody actually is willing to just love me.
Yeah.
As I am, with not trying to change me. But I think maybe my aim is more to Christians who are not operating the same way, that if they could wake up and learn to love, then we can start affecting, a whole community and not just a few.
I can tell you that from the LGBT side, I think for some of them, I'm getting a little choked up now, but you will be the first voice that they ever hear from this perspective. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I really do believe that this is a mission that the Lord has called me and my wife to, and just to be, and I'll just be completely transparent. Like a year ago, if you would have told me this, I would have said, there's no way in hell I would ever do that. Not because I was against people in your community, but that I had so bit down on this church lie.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think it's a lie from Satan of just, well, no, I love them, but I don't like the agenda being pushed down my throat or my kid's throat. And that's where I was at a year ago. And then the Lord just broke my heart and just like, why do you think you're better? And I'm like, you're right. I'm not. Like,
I'm grateful that you are answering him.
Yeah.
And being authentic, genuine, and being willing to be used by him, because this is a message that the world needs to hear. And this is a message that our community needs to hear, that we are loved, accepted, and there are people on the other side that see us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that you've been treated the way you have. It's definitely not biblical.
I can tell you
definitely
that
doesn't look like Jesus.
before you reached out to me, Travis had sent me a message and said, hey, I got a friend, you might remember him, wants to connect with you, and this is why. And it really sucks, but also I'm grateful for him in my life. But he honestly is the first Christian that, outside of you, that I feel like has ever seen and accepted who I am as a human versus Alisha being gay, And so as soon as I got that message from him, I was like, dude, yeah, like whatever, because he genuinely was the first Christian that I ever had encountered that there was no judgment. It was just like, hey, I see you. And whenever I was working with him, I would tell Catherine all the time, oh, I love just being around him and being with him because it's like just comfortable and normal, and so it's amazing to see, like another person that is here and doesn't judge our community and legitimately has love and is passionate about this.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully something resonated with you, something just connected with you or made you think a little bit more. So if you want to find out more about what we're doing or to just stay in the loop, you can do that in a couple ways. You can follow us on Facebook, or you can follow us on Instagram, or you can check out the Learning to Love podcast on all major podcast networks. And then we would greatly appreciate it if you could click that like button, click subscribe, and then click that little bell notification to get notified every time a video goes live. We look forward to connecting and growing with you more.